In this emotional story, a chance encounter in an art gallery reopens old wounds for Elara, a woman who spent 10 years rebuilding her life after betrayal. As voices from the past return, so do the memories, regrets, and the ghost of a friendship that once meant everything. The Geometry of Scars is a story of reckoning, forgiveness, and the quiet courage it takes to move on. Listen to the very end. You may find pieces of yourself in its echoes. The scent of rain-soaked asphalt and old paper should have been comforting, a nostalgic perfume for a bibliophile like Elara. But as she stood in the hushed, cavernous hall of the city's contemporary art gallery, a different scent memory ambushed her. Cheap lilac perfume and the chlorine sting of a public swimming pool. It was the smell of summer, of shared secrets, of a life she had meticulously buried. A decade of careful excavation, and all it took was a single, sidelong glance across the polished concrete floor to bring the ghost roaring back. There, bathed in the stark, white light illuminating a chaotic sculpture of twisted metal, was Maya. Older, of course, the youthful roundness of her face replaced by a sharper, more anxious geometry, but unmistakably her. The way she chewed on her lower lip, the slight, impatient tap of her foot, mannerisms Elara's memory had preserved in perfect, painful clarity. For a frozen moment, the gallery, the art, the last 10 years, all dissolved. It was summer again. They were 17, and the world was a promise, not a postmortem. Elara felt a phantom ache in her chest, the ghost of a wound long since scarred over. Her first instinct was to turn, to melt back into the anonymity of the crowd and the rainy Tuesday afternoon. It would be easy. She had become an expert at strategic exits. But her feet, rooted to the spot, betrayed her. Her husband, Liam, a kind man with warm eyes and a laugh that always made her feel safe, was waiting for her at the gallery cafe. Fleeing would involve explanations she had no desire to give. More than that, a strange, cold curiosity held her captive. What did a decade of consequence look like up close? Forcing a breath into her tight lungs, Elara took a deliberate step forward, the click of her sensible heels against the floor sounding like a gavel calling a long-adjourned court to session. Maya's head snapped up at the sound, her gaze sweeping, then snagging on Elara's face. The recognition was instant, a flicker of shock, then a wave of something complex and guarded. The ghost was no longer just Elara's. It now stood between them, a shimmering, silent entity crafted from a decade of unspoken words. After the schism, Elara had shattered. The dual betrayal, by Maya, the sister of her heart, and by Daniel, the boy she'd thought was her future, had been a cataclysm. For a year, she existed in a gray fog. Her grades slipped, her laughter vanished, and the vibrant colors of her world seemed to have been leached away, leaving only monochrome misery. Their small hometown became a prison, every corner holding a memory, every familiar face a potential source of pitying glances. The story had spread like wildfire, of course. Did you hear about Elara? Poor thing. Her best friend and her boyfriend. The whispers were like sandpaper on her raw nerves. The breaking point came one bleak November afternoon when she saw Maya and Daniel walking hand in hand, laughing into the cold air. They didn't see her, but the sight of them, so carelessly happy in the ruins of her own joy, was the catalyst she needed. That night, she applied to universities as far away as her courage would allow. She chose a city by the sea, a place with no history, no ghosts. The first few years were about survival. She threw herself into her studies. Architecture, the art of building strong, new things from scratch. It was a fitting metaphor. She learned to be alone, not as a state of lack, but as a state of quiet self-sufficiency. She discovered that she could enjoy a film by herself, that a walk on the beach with only the seagulls for company could be restorative, not lonely. Slowly, meticulously, she began to build a new Elara. Her first real job was with a small, innovative firm that valued her fresh perspective. She poured the pain and discipline of her reinvention into her work. Her designs were bold yet functional, praised for their intelligent use of light and space. She wasn't just building structures, she was creating sanctuaries. Success came, not with a sudden bang, but with a steady, rising tide of recognition and respect. It was at a work gala, celebrating a project she had led, that she met Liam. He was a landscape architect, and their conversation began with a shared passion for how people interact with the spaces around them. He didn't try to fill her silences. He seemed to understand them. He saw the strength in her quiet reserve, the resilience that underpinned her success. When she eventually told him her story, months into their relationship, she did so without tears. She presented it as a fact, a part of her history, like a scar on a knee from a childhood fall. It was part of her, but it did not define her. Liam listened, his hand covering hers, and when she was finished, he simply said, his loss. And hers. There was no pity in his eyes, only a deep, unwavering admiration. They built a life together that was calm and stable and full of a profound, uncomplicated love. It was a structure of her own design, and it was beautiful. Maya had won. That was the narrative she clung to in the first few dizzying weeks. She had Daniel. She had triumphed. But the victory felt strangely hollow. The thrill of the forbidden, the secret meetings and stolen kisses that had felt so intoxicatingly vital, evaporated in the harsh light of legitimacy. Without the secrecy, without the shared transgression, their connection was revealed for what it was, a flimsy, selfish impulse. Daniel, once the coveted prize, became a constant, suffocating reminder of her betrayal. Every look, every touch was tainted. When he told her he loved her, the words sounded like a pale echo of the ones he used to say to Elara. She saw judgment in the eyes of their mutual friends, a new, cautious distance. The town that had been their kingdom became a cage. She and Daniel fought constantly, their arguments circular and vicious, always circling back to the unspoken truth. Their relationship was built on a foundation of wreckage, and the ghost of Elara haunted every room. They lasted 6 months. Their breakup was as ugly as their beginning had been clandestine. He called her a snake. She screamed that he was a coward, and in the end, she was left with nothing but the sour taste of ashes in her mouth. She had traded a lifetime of friendship, of sisterhood, for a 6-month lease on a boy she didn't even like anymore. The decade that followed for Maya was a study in inertia. She stayed in their hometown, taking a dead-end administrative job at the local council. Life became a series of lateral moves, never forward. She dated, but the relationships were transient and unsatisfying. She was constantly searching for that initial, intense spark she'd had with Daniel, a validation she could never seem to recapture. She compared every man to him, and every friendship to the one she had purposefully destroyed. She became brittle, her easy laugh replaced by a cynical, cutting wit. She followed Elara's life from a distance, a masochistic ritual performed through the curated windows of social media. She saw the university graduation photos, the posts about a first apartment by the sea, the designs for beautiful buildings shared by Elara's company. She saw the first picture with Liam, his arms securely around Elara, both of them beaming with a light that Maya felt had been extinguished within herself. And then, the wedding photos. Elara, radiant in a simple, elegant dress, looked at her husband with an expression of such pure, unadulterated joy that it felt like a physical blow to Maya. It wasn't jealousy she felt, not anymore. It was a profound, cavernous ache of regret. She had chosen the short-term thrill and had been paying the long-term price ever since. Elara had lost a friend and a boyfriend, but she had gained a world. Maya had won a boyfriend, and in doing so, had lost herself. Back in the gallery, the silence stretched, thick and heavy. It was Maya who broke it, her voice huskier than Elara remembered. Elara, wow, I never thought I'd see you here. Hello, Maya, Elara replied, her tone even, betraying none of the turmoil inside. It's a small world. You look amazing, Maya said, her eyes scanning Elara's tailored coat, the simple pearl earrings, the quiet confidence that seemed to emanate from her. The compliment was genuine, but laced with a painful self-awareness. Maya felt suddenly shabby in her slightly worn jeans and faded jacket, her hair carelessly pulled back. Thank you. You look well, too. It was a polite lie, and they both knew it. Maya looked tired. There were fine lines of stress around her eyes that had nothing to do with age. An awkward dance began, a conversation built on the shifting sands of all that was unsaid. They talked about the art, about the rain, about anything and everything except the one thing that mattered. Finally, Maya couldn't bear the superficiality any longer. I saw your wedding photos online, she said, the words rushing out. He looks like a good man. You look happy. I am, Elara said simply. There was no triumph in her voice, just fact. Liam is a wonderful husband. The name hung in the air. Liam. A new name. Not Daniel. What about you? Elara asked, a gesture toward politeness. Maya gave a short, humorless laugh. Oh, still in the same town, same job. No Liam in the picture. She paused, chewing her lip. Daniel and I, we didn't last long after you left. I guess you know that. I assumed as much, Elara said, her gaze steady. Tears welled in Maya's eyes, hot and sudden. Elara, I am so sorry, she whispered, the confession sounding raw and desperate. There hasn't been a single day in the last 10 years that I haven't regretted what I did. It was the single stupidest, most selfish, most destructive thing I have ever done. I threw away the most important friendship of my life for nothing. I was miserable then, and I've been miserable ever since. The confession, so long overdue, landed in the space between them. A decade ago, it would have been everything Elara wanted to hear. She would have raged and wept and demanded to know why. But now she felt a strange, sad pity. She looked at the woman before her, a woman trapped in the past, haunted by a single, catastrophic choice. And Elara realized the truth. Her own happiness wasn't a revenge. Her success wasn't a statement. It was simply the result of her choice to build a new life, while Maya had remained in the ruins of the old one. I know, Elara said softly. I know you're sorry, Maya. She took a small breath. What you did broke me. It was the worst pain I had ever felt. It forced me to leave, to start over from zero. And for a long time, I hated you for it. I hated you with everything I had. Maya flinched, but listened. But that hate was a poison, Elara continued, her voice clear and calm. And one day I realized it was only hurting me. So I let it go? I had to. I forgave you years ago, Maya. Not for you, but for me. I forgave you so I could be free. From across the hall, she saw Liam rise from their table at the cafe, his brow furrowed with concern as he looked in her direction. Her future, her peace. I have to go, Elara said gently. My husband is waiting. She didn't offer a hug. She didn't suggest they keep in touch. She simply gave a small, final nod, an acknowledgement of the shared history, a definitive closing of the book. As Elara turned and walked away, her steps firm and sure towards the warm, waiting light of the cafe, she didn't look back. She was walking towards her life, a life she had painstakingly built, brick by brick, from the ashes of a fire she had never started. Maya remained standing alone, a solitary figure dwarfed by the chaotic sculpture of twisted metal, finally, and truly understanding that some things, once broken, can never be put back together again. The most devastating punishments are not the ones inflicted upon us by others, but the ones we build for ourselves.